You asked for it, you got it. This is the long-term tester we just got our hands on. This is the 2023 second generation Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid. Wow, that's a long name. This beat out all the other options in the plug-in hybrid options game under $45,000 starting. You can get your hands on this just over $40,000, let's be realistic, with destination, but the MSRP is just under that number. And it is one of the only small three-row vehicles we have in the United States. Let's talk about the basics and why you might be interested in this. Obviously, it has a big Mitsubishi logo up front, but this is closely related to the Nissan Rogue. Nissan owns a small portion of Mitsubishi. It's not actually the whole thing, but they do have a joint venture that's allowed them to share platforms. So up front, we find a unique look with these multi-module LED headlights. Let me know what you think of that look. I don't mind this grille, but I think the headlights are a little bit funky. I really wish this section had been the headlights. That would have been super duper cool. Over here, we have a body that is a little bit longer than average for this segment, right around 186 inches or so, and that's how they were able to squeak in the third row in the back. So unlike something like a RAV4 or CRV, you'll notice that this has a longer greenhouse with a tiny little window right back here for that third row occupant. The bigger benefit to some folks is going to be the extra storage space that we have because the cargo area is logically longer in the rear. Versus its platform mate, the Nissan Rogue, I think I like the slimmer tail lamp look better. I think the rear hatch, generally speaking, is a little bit better than the Rogue. But again, the bigger difference is going to be this cargo area. If you come in and take a look here, you'll notice that it is definitely long for this segment. We have the usual roller cargo shade, which I can pull out of the way. And then we have the really compact third row seats. Pull everything out of here. We also have to pull out this floor mat. Just toss that over the edge. Then we have this two-handed deal here. Pull that in place, then we pull the right things in the right order. And if you look in here, you can see we have a very tiny third row, but it does have one. And yes, obviously the second row seats slide forward and backwards so you can give the third row a little bit of extra room, but this really ought to be reserved for naughty children or your mother-in-law. You can see the size of that rear headrest there because the seat back is fairly low to make it all fit there. Now, whatever you think of this, I will leave that up to you, but personally, I love the idea of a really small third row seat. It's handy to be used in an occasion, but I wish it came out because this module, if I could leave it at home, I would have access to so much more storage area. And that is the one bummer with the Outlander. You cannot get this as a two-row vehicle. It's three-row only. Under the hood, we have a very unique plug-in hybrid system. 248 horsepower total, over 300 pound-feet of torque. But in terms of design, it's very different than what we find in an Escape or a Sportage plug-in hybrid system. And interestingly, a little bit more similar to the average Honda two-motor hybrid system. Because on the one side of the engine bay, we have a 2.4-liter four-cylinder engine. It's rated for 132 horsepower. Then it's connected to a generator unit in the middle, and then can be connected, but usually isn't, to the power motor on this side for the front. 114 horsepower, 188 pound-feet of torque. There's then a separate 134 horsepower, 144 pound-foot of torque electric motor on the back axle. So at most speeds, this is a serial hybrid system. So it's going to drive like an EV because the electric motors are all that are powering you down the road. The engine is generating power, shuttling it over there to either the front electric motor, the battery, or the back electric motor based on the needs of the vehicle at the time. However, at certain speeds, it can close a clutch pack up front and directly power the front wheels mechanically through a fixed ratio right across the two motor units. So in that respect, again, somewhat similar to the Honda system. In that mode, it still offers all-wheel drive because it can generate power or it can pull power from the battery and then power the electric motor in the rear. And even though the electric motors are not exactly identical, the power profile is really quite similar. So as far as electric vehicles go, this is going to be very much like an approximately 250 horsepower dual motor symmetrical electric vehicle. That's quite a mouthful, but that's essentially what's going on with this system. Now, clearly there are some downsides. The downside is fuel economy when operating as a hybrid. Serial hybrids just are not as efficient as parallel hybrids, which is why it has that limited parallel mode. You should average about 26 miles per gallon in this in mixed driving, according to the EPA, once the battery is exhausted. That is definitely lower than a RAV4 Prime, which is essentially 40 miles per gallon if you treat it nicely. The battery pack is low in the vehicle, so it doesn't compromise the interior space or the cargo area or that trunk area back there. You put gas in on this side, you put the electricity in on the other side. The 20 kilowatt hour onboard battery pack is definitely large for a vehicle in this size category, which is how we get the 38 miles of electric range. You can squeak that out to 40 if you're being really gentle. Over here we have the 2 charging ports. This is the Unicorn. It's a CHAdeMO charging port. This is one of the very few plug-in hybrids in the world that can DC fast charge, and about the only one that I can think of that fast charges with the older CHAdeMO standard. On this side, we get the standard J1772 charge port for AC level 2 or level 1 charging. Charge times are a little on the long side regardless of the kind of power you have on offer. The DC fast charge connector can get this an 80% charge in about 40 minutes or so. Remember that DC fast charge rates are a function of the size of the battery pack. This is not a terribly big battery. On the AC side of things, however, we also have a relatively slow onboard charger. It's an approximately 3.3 kilowatt unit, and that's what we see in the base version of the RAV4 Prime, but the RAV4 Prime does have the option of a faster AC level 2 charger. This can charge in the average window overnight or at the office, something like that. It's going to take about 6.5 hours or so, but if you want to shuffle through those electric vehicles at your office, especially in a work situation where you're trying to share chargers, this will occupy that charger for quite some time. Now this Outlander plug-in hybrid is the SEL Touring, which started just under $48,000. There's one big reason I chose this trim, and that is this interior. It's the only way to get this light gray interior in the Outlander. We have the light gray sections on the dashboard, we have the light gray seats. I love light gray interiors. Also, these look really good on camera, and since you guys are watching us on video, it made the most sense. This does have leather upholstery, so if you're looking for leather upholstery, you'll find that in a various number of trims in the Outlander plug-in hybrid. I like the stitching in this model. There's also a really attractive orangey interior, sort of orangey brown, but some of the dashboard components do not stay orangey brown. They're actually black in that model, which again, I think this just looks better on camera. Really, most of this interior is shared with the Nissan Rogue, and I think that's the best thing about this vehicle is the dashboard design is very nice. I also like the dashboard design in the Rogue. We have the controls for the tri-zone automatic climate control system down there. This vehicle does feature a heat pump, so heating the cabin can be done without starting the engine. We have a tilt telescopic steering column with a large range of motion. Big full LCD instrument cluster, somewhat smaller touchscreen right there in the dash, and very logically placed controls. And thanks to its size, it has a pretty decently accommodating back seat. If I jump back in here, you can see plenty of legroom, plenty of headroom. I've got about 3 inches of legroom left there. Several inches of headroom, even though this does have the panoramic moonroof, although it does kind of feel like my forehead's gonna hit that, although it doesn't. That's just because of the way that's shaped there. Relatively flat floor down here, which is a nice touch. Again, 3-zone automatic climate control. The rear seats move in 2 different ways. You can fold them flat with the cargo area in the back, or you can tilt them forward and slide it for easier access to the 3rd row. Now we should talk more about that 3rd row. Let's talk honestly about what's required to make the 3rd row usable. Again, front seat adjusted for me at 6 feet tall. As a driver, I probably wouldn't be willing to move it too much further forward. My knees are digging into the seat back right now, and I have this seat in a fairly upright position. So let me walk around, try and get into the 3rd row. Flip and fold the flippy foldy bits. Pop those headrests up, and then let's see what happens. Again, tilt and slide 2nd row. And then, oh, well, I mean, if I had no feet, well, whew, there we go. Knees digging in there, but you know what? I am back here, and I could strap myself in, but clearly there are a few things to know. There's basically no way for me to get my head back here to the headrest because it is quite far back, and if I close the hatch, things would be a little bit trickier. So this really ought to be reserved for smaller people for sure. Also, no floor mats back here and not a lot of legroom going on. But again, I love emergency 3rd row seats. So don't get me wrong, I would much rather have this than a 2-row model, although I do think that Nissan, or rather Mitsubishi, should have given us the option for removing the 3rd row from the vehicle. That really would have given this a really cool feature. And there you have it. That's our latest addition to the fleet. Whether this hangs on for 6 to 9 months, as most of our vehicles do, or hangs out for about 3 years like the Hyundai Nexo did, remains to be seen. One of the reasons I liked this format of vehicle is for its larger and more accommodating 3rd row, and that's also why I was really looking at something like the Kia Sorento. The Sorento is a little bit wider than this, and that is one of the things to know about this as far as a 3-row vehicle. Yes, it does technically have 7 seats, but the 6 people in the Sorento plug-in hybrid will be more comfortable, and the 7 people or 8 people in a Honda Pilot or the new Grand Highlander will certainly be more comfortable. This is a relatively narrow vehicle. The Honda Pilot is about 5 inches wider. This is significantly wider than the first generation Outlander, which is why the proportions I think are more acceptable to the American eye. That was definitely a narrower vehicle designed for other world markets, and they just happened to bring it along to the US. This was definitely designed with the American market and American tastes in mind. So again, let me know what you think of all of this down there in the comment section. Let us know what you would like us to test. I will definitely be testing, trying to remove the third row, seeing if there's some way to make that either just easily removable, either just as a thought exercise, or just taking it out so that way I just won't use it as a third row. If anything else you want to know, let me know. We will obviously be doing fuel economy testing, range testing, all that good stuff with this model, and putting about 10,000 miles on it or so over the next few months. See all of you later.